My husband's boss extended an invitation for me to visit his lake house. The outcome is truly astonishing. I never imagined I would be the type of woman to experience a moment like that. Conversely, I never anticipated that much would alter after turning 60. Life finds its balance, doesn't it? Your routines evolve with you. There is solace in familiarity. I participated in my book club, tended to my garden, and enjoyed the company of my husband Jim, who has dedicated over 25 years to his career. We maintained a steady course, ensuring safety, perhaps excessively so. Jim's superior, Richard, consistently maintained a courteous yet aloof demeanor during corporate dinners, embodying the archetype of a man who donned crisp linen attire in the summer and perpetually held a glass filled with a rich amber liquid. He lacked flamboyance, yet there was an undeniable quality in his demeanor, self-assured, composed, observant, that compelled you to sit up a little straighter upon his arrival. When Jim arrived home one evening in early June and mentioned that Richard had invited us to his lake house for the weekend, I was taken aback. We? In fact, it's solely you. He mentioned that he has the Henderson project to complete, but he believed you might appreciate a brief respite. I halted, my hands suspended above the sink, bubbles cascading down. Myself. What could be the reason for his invitation to me? Jim let out a soft chuckle, his hand moving to the back of his neck in a familiar gesture of uncertainty. He mentioned that you always appear so composed, leading him to believe that a weekend to yourself would be beneficial. It seems he intended it as a thoughtful gesture. That may have marked the initial instance when something stirred within me, a peculiar blend of flattery and curiosity. It had been quite some time since I enjoyed a weekend away without Jim, not since the kids moved out, and even then, it was always accompanied by someone, friends, family, or a busy schedule, always more than just myself. On that Friday, I carefully packed a modest overnight bag, included a couple of paperbacks, and drove the hour-and-a-half north along the winding forest roads. The lake house emerged from the landscape as the sun commenced its descent, casting long golden streaks that danced across the water, transforming the glassy surface into a canvas of flames. The residence exuded a sense of elegance and comfort. Cedar planks adorned the structure, complemented by a spacious wraparound porch, while the tall windows stand open, akin to eyes eager to divulge their secrets. Richard greeted me at the driveway, his sleeves rolled up and a gentle smile lingering at the corners of his lips. "Caroline," he said with genuine warmth, "I'm truly delighted you could be here." His casual, effortless way of saying my name felt as if we were old friends, despite having exchanged little more than polite greetings. I emerged, acutely conscious of how the light accentuated the contours surrounding my eyes. I appreciate the invitation. The journey was delightful. Despite my protests, he assisted me with my bag. "I thought you might appreciate a moment of tranquility. Freedom from schedules and responsibilities. Simply air and water, with a touch of wine if you prefer." On that initial evening, we settled onto the porch, gazing out over the lake. He prepared grilled trout infused with lemon and herbs, while we savored wine from broad glasses that captured the warm glow of the lanterns he had elegantly draped along the railing. We discussed our children, his adult daughter residing in Oregon, and my son and daughter, both of whom had married young and now lived quite a distance away, making visits less than convenient. Then, quite unexpectedly, our conversation turned to the topic of aging. "It's amusing," I remarked, swirling the last of the wine, "how one can feel so invisible at times, as if you fulfilled your role and are now meant to quietly recede into the background." Richard inclined his head, observing me intently. You don't seem like someone who would fade away." I chuckled, feeling a mix of embarrassment and warmth. "I appreciate your kind words." A moment lingered, not uneasy, but rich with meaning. The cool night air brushed against my skin, carrying the scents of the lake, cedar, and the faint whiff of distant smoke from the fire he had yet to ignite. I had grown unaccustomed to being gazed upon in such a manner. I wasn't exactly a person of intrigue, not as if someone who still possessed. Until next time. We bid each other goodnight shortly thereafter, and I made myself comfortable in the guest room. Expansive windows frame the serene water view, while the linens are impeccably crisp and fresh, infused with a subtle hint of lavender. I found myself awake longer than anticipated, observing the moon's reflection dance upon the lake, while the occasional creak of the wood signaled the house's gentle settling. Upon waking in the morning, I was greeted by the enticing aroma of coffee and bacon. Richard was already attired, casually donning jeans paired with a navy sweater. He passed me a mug, as if we had shared this moment countless times in the past. This morning, I was considering a canoe ride. "Are you ready for the wild journey with me?" I nodded, taken aback by the rush of excitement that coursed through me. I truly appreciate that. The lake lay in serene stillness, a tranquility that enveloped you, as if you were the only souls remaining in existence. We glided through the water at a leisurely pace, allowing my fingers to dip into the cool depths, a refreshing sensation that both startled and centered me. "Have you ever desired something unique?" I inquired of him, uncertain of the reason behind my question. He cast a brief look in my direction, the sunlight glinting off the oar he held. "What is it different from?" "Life, I would imagine. The addition we received." He took a moment before responding. "I once did. At that point, I ceased my inquiries." Recently, he gazed out at the horizon. I find myself pondering once more. I remained silent following that moment. I allowed the words to linger between us, akin to mist gently resting on the water's surface. Later, back at the house, we gathered by the fire for a while. He offered me a blanket as the sun began to set, maintaining a proximity that was intimate yet respectful. The distance separating us seemed deliberate, electric. The atmosphere was devoid of pressure or unwelcome stares, yet it resonated with an unarticulated tension. "Caroline," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you need not respond, but there's something I've been eager to inquire about. Are you content?" I gazed at him, truly gazed. His face bore the marks of age, yet it radiated sincerity. The inquiry was not an imposition. It was a presentation. It felt, in a way, like the most personal request anyone had made of me in years. I paused momentarily. "I am uncertain." He nodded, neither surprised nor judgmental, simply there in the moment. We remained in quietude as the fire emitted soft pops and cracks, releasing sparks that danced upward like miniature stars. I was uncertain about the direction the weekend would take. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly awake, not as someone's wife, mother, or dependable friend, but simply as myself. I began to understand that it had been quite some time since I truly encountered my own self. The following morning began with a delicate fog drifting over the lake, soft and silvery, resembling a gentle blanket spread across the water. I positioned myself by the window, cradling my coffee, my bare feet resting on the cool hardwood floor, observing the gradual ascent of the mist. The silence held a soothing quality, with the trees swaying softly, as if encouraging me to take slower, deeper breaths. A note had been left by Richard on the kitchen counter. Took a stroll down to the dock. Feel free to join me whenever you are prepared. I carefully selected my attire. A cozy sweater paired with jeans, minimal makeup, just a touch of moisturizer, and a quick brush through my hair. I glimpsed my reflection in the hallway mirror. Older indeed, but certainly not overlooked. Not today. He sat at the end of the dock, legs extended, a thermos resting beside him. I approached him silently, removing my shoes before taking my place beside him. The wood felt cool and slightly damp, while the scent of pine intensified near the water's edge. "Good morning," I uttered, my voice soft, nearly filled with awe. He pivoted his head and offered a smile. "I was looking forward to your visit. It is truly a stunning piece." We remained in quiet contemplation for a time, a type that resonates with fullness. A pair of ducks gracefully glided across the water, while in the trees, a loon echoed its call. A sense of tranquility enveloped me, one I hadn't realized I was longing for. "Have you ever contemplated the way we allocate our time?" I inquired softly. The years pass by with such swiftness that they often go unnoticed. He mentioned it constantly, particularly in recent times. I suddenly became aware that I had been navigating life on autopilot. That resonated deeply within me. I dedicated decades to fulfilling my perceived responsibilities, nurturing my children, supporting Jim, and maintaining harmony in our lives. I have no regrets about any of it. However, I found it impossible to overlook the emptiness that had emerged over the past few years. The one that softly murmured during the stillness, inquiring, "Is this the end?" I found myself saying that I used to love painting, much to my own surprise. It has been years since I last picked up a brush. Richard gazed at me with a tenderness that stirred a deep ache in my chest. "What caused you to halt?" "I believe I have simply ceased to allocate time for it. For my own use." One becomes so immersed in the act of giving that the permission to desire things for oneself is often overlooked. He took his time to respond. He instead reached into the bag he had brought and retrieved a small sketch pad along with a set of pencils. "I acquired these over the weekend. I occasionally engage in sketching." Assists in my thought process. I gazed at him, moved by the subtle closeness of the gesture. "Did you bring them for me?" He gave a nod. "I anticipated that you would be interested in giving it a try." It was a seemingly simple gesture, yet it held a significance beyond words. We dedicated the remainder of the morning to that spot, with him expertly sketching the trees and the gentle curve of the shoreline, while I awkwardly endeavored to depict the way the mist glided over the lake. Though I was a bit out of practice, the rhythm still flowed through my hands. The flow. Subsequently, we enjoyed lunch on the porch, featuring grilled sandwiches accompanied by a refreshing salad. Laughter filled the air, genuine and effortless, accompanied by tales we had yet to unveil. He recounted the story of his first marriage, explaining how it concluded not with betrayal, but rather in a gradual shared silence. I shared with him the story of Jim's heart scare from 3 years back, emphasizing how it had impacted me more profoundly than it had him. It seems that I began to embrace a more modest lifestyle following that experience. I expressed my fear of desiring too much, worried that it might all be snatched away. "I comprehend that," he stated, "yet desiring more does not equate to being ungrateful. It simply indicates that you are still among the living." That evening, following dinner and a stroll along the woodland's edge, we gathered by the fireplace indoors. The gentle glow of the flames bathed the room in soft amber tones, and the silence that enveloped us felt transformed, imbued with a heightened sense of awareness. I observed the subtle movement of his hand as it grazed the arm of the chair adjacent to mine, and the softening of his voice when he uttered my name. Caroline, I took a moment to glance over. I trust this weekend has been pleasant and uneventful. I aimed to ensure you felt comfortable and included. I have not, I stated. In fact, I truly feel more like my authentic self here than I have in many years. He maintained eye contact with me for an extended period. There was an absence of haste, an absence of pressure, merely a profound and genuine connection between us, something neither of us had anticipated. I'm glad, he said, his voice gentle. A log crackled in the fire, and the sound caught me off guard for a moment. I chuckled, and he joined in, and in that moment, a sense of lightness enveloped us once more. We exchanged goodnight as we had done previously, yet an unfamiliar tension lingered in the atmosphere, subtle, respectful, yet impossible to ignore. As I settled into bed, I discovered myself lying awake once more, yet this time I felt a sense of calm. I found myself acutely conscious, attuned to the rhythm of my breath, the sensation of the sheets caressing my skin, and the subtle realization that something within me was undergoing a transformation. I found myself uncertain about the direction of this journey. I found myself uncertain about what this was, yet I sensed an opening, something gentle, unforeseen, and profoundly vibrant. The third day arrived, enveloped in a stillness that transcended mere weather conditions. It was more profound. A shift had occurred between us, not articulated through words, but evident in the subtle manner we navigated our space together. A rhythm emerged, bringing a sense of comfort, and beneath it all, a gentle tug that I hadn't experienced in years. As dawn broke, I rose early and strolled barefoot to the kitchen, enveloped in a cozy blanket. Richard was already present, perusing the newspaper with his glasses perched low on his nose, dressed in a well-loved flannel shirt and wearing the familiar, easy smile that welcomed me each morning. "Did you sleep well?" he inquired, offering me a cup of coffee before I had the chance to ask. "I must say, I believe your guest bed is attempting to charm me." He chuckled, a genuine, hearty laugh that caused his eyes to crinkle at the corners. "I will instruct it to conduct itself appropriately." We gathered at the quaint kitchen table, enjoying our coffee, with the lake faintly visible through the window behind him. The silence had transformed. It was no longer merely an absence, but rather a presence in its own right. I expressed that I am unfamiliar with this situation. For what purpose? Gaining visibility. At some point, I became accustomed to blending into the background. At home, there was always a demand for my attention, yet no one genuinely inquired about my well-being. Not quite. Richard placed his cup on the table, his demeanor a blend of seriousness and warmth. "I acknowledge your presence, Caroline. With each passing day of your presence, I've noticed you increasingly." His words struck a chord within me, reaching a part I hadn't realized required focus, leaving me momentarily at a loss for words. I gazed out the window, my eyelids fluttering rapidly. He rose, approached, and rested a hand on my shoulder, purposeful, yet gentle. I gazed up at him. His touch was deliberate and assured, infused with genuine care. "We can skip any topics you'd prefer not to discuss," he said. "But if there's something on your mind, I'm here to listen." It was a seemingly trivial moment, yet I could feel a wave of emotion constricting my chest. Neither sadness nor joy, but rather the profound experience of being encountered completely, without the necessity of explanation. Following breakfast, we took a stroll through the woods. The pine needles created a gentle cushion beneath each step, while the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting delicate golden rays. We discussed in greater depth the lives we had led, the marriages, the children, and the countless hours dedicated to giving and giving. I acknowledged that I had a fear of letting others down. I remain so. What is the reason? Having dedicated so much of my life to ensuring the well-being of others, I now find myself in a position where I can finally contemplate my own desires. Yet it feels indulgent. Richard came to a halt. He turned to me, his hands settling softly into his pockets. Desiring greater things for yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of courage. His delivery was neither dramatic nor romantic. It was tangible, authentic, and it lingered with me long after we arrived back at the house. That evening, we prepared dinner together. Chopped vegetables arranged side by side, elbows brushing as they both reached for the same bowl, exchanging stories and laughter, reminiscent of two individuals who had shared a bond far longer than just a few days. It was indeed domestic, yet it possessed an intimacy that caught me off guard. Once we finished our meal, he retrieved a vinyl record player from a cabinet tucked away in the corner of the living room. He set a record spinning, and the gentle murmur of classic jazz started to envelop the room. "Do you dance?" he inquired, rising to his feet and extending his hand. "I haven't done that in years," I remarked, half chuckling. "Not without first enjoying a glass of wine." He arched an eyebrow. "It's fortunate that we've already experienced one." For just a brief moment, I paused before grasping his hand. He drew me softly closer, his other hand delicately placed on my waist. We moved in harmony, gently and effortlessly, as if the years that had passed since high school dances had simply dissolved. I leaned my head against his shoulder instinctively. His physique exuded warmth and strength. I experienced a sense of security in that place. However, beyond that, I experienced a sense of being desired, not for my abilities, contributions, or efforts, but simply for my existence. As the final notes of the song faded, he remained in place. He gazed down at me, his hand lingering at my side. He stated that he is not attempting to complicate matters. "I simply wish to express my honesty. Every moment spent with you has been a true pleasure, and it's not solely due to your delightful company." I gazed up at him, our faces mere inches apart. My heart pulsed in my ears, not from anxiety, but from a deeper, more assured feeling. "I understand," I mentioned. "I experienced the same sentiment. We did not share a kiss, not at that time." Yet, an undeniable connection emerged between us, genuine, charged with intensity, tempered by restraint, and marked by a profound mutual understanding. It surpassed the intensity of any kiss imaginable. As I prepared for bed, I paused by the mirror and traced the outline of my lips, still holding a smile that had eluded me for years. I reflected on Jim, not with remorse, but with a poignant sense of understanding. Our marriage was robust and unwavering, yet it had not experienced such vitality in quite some time. For the first time, I found myself contemplating what it truly means to be seen, not out of obligation or routine, but from a place of authentic connection. This weekend held unknown possibilities for me. However, I was aware that no matter what unfolded next, I would not go back home as the same woman. The last morning dawned under a muted gray sky, accompanied by the gentle rhythm of distant rain tapping softly against the roof. The weight was minimal, merely sufficient to soften the outlines of the trees outside the windows and envelop the scene in a serene tranquility. I stirred gradually, not due to an alarm or a racing mind, but from the gentle awareness that I wasn't quite ready to depart just yet. In the kitchen below, Richard stood at the stove, expertly frying eggs while softly humming a tune that felt oddly familiar. The aroma of rosemary and butter filled the air. He turned his head slightly as I entered, offering a smile that suggested my presence was perfectly ordinary. He mentioned that he would prepare breakfast one final time, although I secretly wished you might overlook your departure. I smiled, maintaining his gaze for a moment longer than my usual habit. I have not forgotten. I have yet to reach a decision. We dined at the table, savoring each moment. Neither of us mentioned the journey back or the upcoming work week. The atmosphere surrounding us was warm, yet there existed a newfound softness, a tender recognition that something fragile had taken shape and that separation would inevitably alter it. Once the dishes were cleared and the coffee was brewed, I stood by the living room window, observing the rain cascade down the glass. Richard approached from behind, maintaining a proximity that was intimate yet respectful of personal space. He mentioned that he had been contemplating. I shifted my gaze to him. What is the topic of discussion? Sometimes we remain unaware of what we've been missing until it appears directly before us. A moment of stillness enveloped the space, not an uncomfortable silence, but one where the atmosphere grew dense and the weight of unspoken words surrounded you. Carolina, I understand this weekend took us by surprise, and I came without a specific plan, but whatever is happening between us feels genuine to me. His voice exuded confidence and assurance, yet it carried a warmth that was unmistakable. He remained passive, neither advancing nor requesting anything. He was presenting an offering, one that was genuine. I moved in closer, just within reach, to gently place my hand upon his chest. His heartbeat pulsed beneath my fingertips. It feels genuine to me as well, I remarked. He released a breath he had been holding, and a softness settled further into his expression. I remain uncertain about what unfolds next, I continued. I am not fleeing from anything, rather, I am contemplating. This weekend, I experienced a profound awakening after a long period of slumber. Richard extended his arm, softly grasping my hand in his. There's no need to solve everything today. However, you absolutely deserve to experience a sense of vitality once more, and not just for a fleeting weekend. A prolonged silence enveloped us, punctuated only by the rhythmic patter of the rain and the sound of our breathing. When we finally kissed, it unfolded with a sense of anticipation and grace. It was measured and intentional, as if we were entering a realm that was both delicate and revered. It exuded warmth and understanding, devoid of desperation, embodying the ache of something long unspoken finally given the freedom to breathe. We lingered in that moment for some time, and when we finally separated, he gently pressed his forehead against mine. Silence speaks volumes. Subsequently, we collaborated to pack my bag. He assisted in folding my clothes, and I found myself savoring each gesture, each exchanged glance. It was as if I was departing from a location that had, in just a matter of days, woven itself into the very fabric of my being. Prior to entering the vehicle, Richard escorted me to the driver's side and retrieved something from his pocket. "This is a bit silly," he remarked, presenting me with a small, folded piece of paper. I have opened it. Within was a drawing. I sit by the dock, sketchpad resting on my lap, trees standing tall behind me, my gaze directed toward the water. "Did you create this drawing?" He acknowledged with a nod. "I wish to recall you precisely in that manner. Oblivious, serene, entirely authentic." I sensed tears welling up behind my eyes, yet I refrained from allowing them to spill over. I embraced him fully, wholeheartedly. No commitments were made. There was no necessity for that. The journey back was serene, yet far from desolate. I felt clear and certain. I experienced a profound sense of completeness, as if I had unearthed a part of myself that I was previously unaware had been absent. Returning to my kitchen, I affixed the sketch to the fridge. I prepared tea. I stood by the window, observing the wind gently sway the trees in my backyard. In that moment, I contemplated the essence of being seen, truly seen, not merely as a wife, a mother, or a caretaker, but as a woman in my own right, ever inquisitive, ever sensing, ever vibrant. Perhaps that is the most unexpected aspect. It's not the event itself, but the way it reminded me of my true self. What about that memory? That is the aspect I will always hold on to. Whatever lies ahead, I will face it with clarity and awareness. This time, I will ensure to bring my own sketch pad,